I'd always heard stories about my grandma's old farmhouse in rural Missouri, out in the middle of nowhere, where the nearest neighbor was a good mile down a dirt road. It was the kind of place where you'd hear coyotes howling at night and the wind rattling the shutters like it was trying to get in. When I inherited the house after my grandma passed last year, I figured it'd be a good spot to crash for the summer, maybe fix it up and sell it. I was fresh out of college, broke, and honestly, I didn't have anywhere else to go. So, I packed up my beat-up Honda Civic and drove out to Callaway County, where the house sat on a sprawling, overgrown plot surrounded by cornfields. The place was a wreck. Peeling paint, creaky floors, and that musty smell old houses get when they've been empty for too long. It was a 2-story deal, with a wraparound porch and a basement that looked like it hadn't been touched since the Nixon administration. I spent the first week just cleaning, trying to make it livable. That's when I found the box in the attic, a dusty old thing tucked behind a pile of moldy quilts. Inside were yellowed photos, some handwritten letters, and a small, heart-shaped locket with a cracked glass face. The photos were grainy, but they showed 2 girls, maybe teenagers, standing side by side. At first, I thought they were just standing really close, but then I realized they were conjoined twins. Their shoulders were fused, and they shared a single dress tailored to fit their connected bodies. Their faces were identical, but one was smiling faintly, while the other looked off, like she was glaring at the camera. The letters were from the 1920s, written by my great-great-aunt Clara, who used to live here. She mentioned the twins, Eliza and Emma, who were born in this house. According to Clara, the twins were inseparable in every way, but not by choice. Emma was sweet, always trying to make people laugh, but Eliza was bitter, angry at the world, for the way they were born. The townsfolk called them cursed, said their birth was a bad omen. Clara wrote that the twins died young, barely 18, in some kind of accident in the house. She didn't give details, but one line stuck with me. Eliza's anger never left this place. It's in the walls, in the mirrors. I'm not the superstitious type, but that locket creeped me out. It had their initials, E and E, engraved on the back, and when I picked it up it felt weirdly warm, like it had been sitting in the sun. I set it on the nightstand in the guest bedroom where I was sleeping and tried to forget about it. That night I heard the first noise, a faint tapping, like someone was rapping their knuckles on glass. I checked the windows, but they were all shut tight. The sound stopped, so I brushed it off as the house settling. Old places like that make all kinds of noises, right? The next few days things got weirder. I'd catch glimpses of something in the bathroom mirror. Not a clear reflection, just a shadow that didn't match my movements. One night, I was brushing my teeth, and for a split second, I swear I saw 2 faces staring back at me, one smiling, one scowling. I dropped my toothbrush and bolted out of there. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe the stress of being alone in this creepy old house. But then the noises started getting louder, scratching sounds from the basement, footsteps on the stairs when I was the only one home. I even called 911 one night when I heard what sounded like a woman crying, but the cops found nothing. They probably thought I was losing it. I started digging into the twins' story, mostly to distract myself. I found more of Clara's journals in the attic, and they painted a grim picture. Eliza and Emma's parents kept them hidden in the house, ashamed of their condition. Eliza hated being stared at, hated the whispers from the few townsfolk who knew about them. Emma, though, craved connection. She'd sneak letters to Clara begging her to visit. The journals mentioned a mirror in the house, one the twins loved to sit in front of, doing each other's hair. Clara wrote that after they died, people swore they saw Eliza's face in that mirror, her eyes burning with rage. The mirror was still in the house, a big ornate thing in the upstairs hallway. I'd avoided it since I moved in. It gave me the creeps. One night, I couldn't sleep. The tapping was back, louder, coming from the hallway. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept out of my room. The mirror was at the end of the hall, and in the dark, it looked like a black void. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to walk toward it. The tapping stopped, and for a moment it was dead silent. Then I saw it, my reflection, but it wasn't alone. Two figures stood behind me, their shoulders fused, their faces pale and gaunt. Emma's eyes were wide, almost pleading, while Eliza's were narrow, filled with hate. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The locket which I'd stupidly brought with me started burning in my hand, and I dropped it. The glass shattered, and a scream tore through the house, not mine but theirs. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, and ran downstairs. The crying started again, but this time it was coming from the basement. I don't know why I went. Down there, maybe I was too freaked out to think straight, but I grabbed a flashlight and descended the creaky stairs. The basement was damp, cluttered with old furniture and boxes. In the corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A small child-sized doll dressed in a faded dress, sitting on a chair. It looked handmade, with two heads stitched together, one with a painted smile, the other with a scowl. Next to it was a pile of broken glass, like someone had smashed a mirror. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, clutching a kitchen knife, listening to the house groan and creak. At dawn, I packed my stuff and left. I didn't care about selling the place anymore, I just wanted out. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror, and for a split second I saw them again, Eliza and Emma, staring at me from the porch. Emma's lips moved like she was trying to say something, but Eliza's glare silenced her. I haven't been back since. I don't know what happened to that locket or that doll, and I don't want to know. I'd just started my sophomore year at a small college in Eugene, Oregon, a town where it rains half the year, and everyone's either a hipster or a jock. I was stoked to finally move out of the dorms and into an off-campus apartment, a cramped, two-bedroom place I found on Craigslist. It was close enough to campus to bike, but far enough to feel like I wasn't living in a frat house. The rent was dirt cheap, which should have been my first red flag. But I was too broke to care. My new roommate, Elliot, seemed normal enough when we met. He was quiet, kinda nerdy, with glasses and a hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed since high school. He said he was a transfer student, majoring in biology, and that was about all I got out of him. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are just introverts, right? The apartment was a typical college dump. Mismatched furniture, a kitchen that smelled like burnt popcorn, and creaky hardwood floors. Elliot took the smaller bedroom, which had this weird, narrow closet he kept locked with a padlock. I asked him about it once, and he just shrugged, saying he kept personal stuff in there. I figured it was like old comics or something embarrassing, so I let it go. The first couple of weeks were fine. Elliot mostly kept to himself, studying in his room or heading to class early. He didn't party, didn't have friends over, just existed. But then I started noticing things that didn't add up. It started with the noises at night. I'd be in my room scrolling through my phone when I'd hear voices from Elliot's room. 2 voices, to be exact. One was low, like a whisper, and the other sounded like someone crying, soft and muffled. The weirdest part wasn't what I saw, it was what I heard. I'd press my ear to the wall trying to make out words, but it was always too faint. I asked Elliot about it one morning over cereal, and he got this weird look like I'd caught him stealing. "Must have been my headphones," he said. "I watch a lot of movies." I didn't buy it, but I wasn't about to start a fight with the guy I had to live with for a year. Then there was the mirror thing. Our apartment had this big, ugly mirror in the living room, the kind you'd find in a thrift store. I'd catch Elliot standing in front of it, just staring, sometimes muttering to himself. Not like practicing a speech or anything, just talking, like he was having a conversation. One time I walked in and saw him smile at his reflection, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was sad, almost desperate. I asked if he was okay, and he jumped, like he hadn't heard me come in. "Yeah, just thinking out loud," he said, and hurried back to his room. That's when I noticed something else. His bedroom had 2 beds, twin beds pushed close together. I asked why he had 2, and he said the landlord left them there, and he just never bothered moving one out. "I sleep alone," he said, a little too quickly. I didn't push it, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. Things got creepier as the semester went on. I'd wake up to the sound of that padlocked closet creaking, like someone was moving around inside. One night I heard footsteps, 2 sets of them, pacing in Elliot's room. I told myself it was just the old building, but my gut was screaming that something was off. I started avoiding Elliot, eating in my room, keeping my door locked at night. I even thought about calling 911 once, when I heard that crying again, louder than ever, but what was I going to say? My roommates being weird, I'd sound like an idiot. It all came to a head one weekend when Elliot went home to visit his parents. He left in a rush, forgetting to lock his closet. I know I shouldn't have snooped, but I couldn't help it. I grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen and jimmied the padlock open. Inside was a cardboard box, taped shut, with E and J scrawled on it in marker. I dragged it out, my hands shaking, and cut it open. Inside were old hospital documents, yellowed and brittle, along with a few Polaroids. The documents were from a hospital in Portland, dated 2003. They described a pair of conjoined twins, Elliot and Jonah, born attached at the torso. There were medical diagrams, notes about a separation surgery when they were 6. Jonah didn't survive. The Polaroids showed them as kids, smiling despite their condition, their arms wrapped around each other. In one photo, Elliot was looking at Jonah, his eyes full of love. I felt sick. He said he was an only child. That was a lie. I shoved the box back in the closet and tried to act normal when Elliot got home. But I couldn't shake those images. Couldn't unhear those voices. That night I heard the whispering again, louder, like it was right outside my door. I grabbed my phone, ready to bolt, when Elliot knocked. "Can we talk?" he said, his voice shaky. I opened the door and he was standing there, pale as a ghost, holding one of the Polaroids. "You went in my closet, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded, too scared to lie. He sat on the couch, staring at the photo. "Jonah's still with me," he said. "I feel him every day. He's angry I got to live, and he didn't." I didn't know what to say. I mumbled something about being sorry, but he cut me off. "He talks to me in the mirror. He says he's coming back." I laughed nervously, thinking he was messing with me, but his eyes were dead serious. He stood up and walked to the living room mirror, motioning for me to follow. "Look," he whispered. I didn't want to, but I did. At first it was just our reflections, me freaked out and Elliot staring blankly. Then I saw it. Over Elliot's shoulder, another face appeared, just for a second. It was Jonah, his, features twisted, his eyes locked on mine. I screamed and stumbled back, tripping over the coffee table. Elliot didn't move. He just kept staring at the mirror, smiling that sad, desperate smile. "He sees you now," he said. I moved out the next day, crashing on a friend's couch until I found a new place. I never went back to that apartment, never talked to Elliot again. Last I heard, he dropped out and disappeared. I still see that face sometimes, in random reflections, a moment glimpse that makes my heart stop. I don't know if Jonah's really, or if Elliot's grief just broke him. I know what I saw in that mirror, and I'll never look at one the same way again. It was the summer after senior year, and me and my buddies, Jake, Sarah, and Mia, were bored out of our minds in our small town in rural Pennsylvania. We grew up in the shadow of the old Danvers Asylum, this crumbling brick monstrosity about a mile into the woods behind our high school. Everyone had ghost stories about it. Patients chained to beds, lobotomies gone wrong, the usual creepy stuff kids make up. The place had been shut down since the 50s, but it was still there, rotting away. That July we decided to hike out to the asylum, half as a dare, half because we had nothing better to do. We thought it'd be a laugh, maybe snap some pics for Instagram. Man, I wish we'd stayed home. The forest was thick, all tangled vines, and mossy rocks, with that damp smell you only get in places that don't see much sun. We followed an old trail, barely visible, that Jake swore led to the asylum. About halfway there, Sarah tripped over something metal sticking out of the ground. It wasn't a root or a rock. It was the edge of a box, rusted and half buried in the dirt. We thought it was just an old box, maybe some hiker's trash, but curiosity got the better of us. Jake grabbed a stick and started digging, and after a few minutes we pulled it free. It was a medical kit, like something a battlefield medic would carry, with a faded red cross on the lid. The lock was rusted through, so we pried it open right there. Inside were rusty surgical tools, scalpels, forceps, a saw that made my skin crawl. There was also a small sealed jar with a photo inside, preserved in some kind of liquid. The photo showed two girls, maybe 12 years old, conjoined at the hip. They were dressed in identical white gowns, their faces eerily similar, but not quite the same. One was smiling, the other staring blankly at the camera. Tucked under the jar was a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle but readable. The handwriting was tight, precise like a doctor's. The first entry was dated 1947, signed by a Dr. Harold Vance from Danvers Asylum. He wrote about subjects A and B, twin girls born conjoined, who he believed shared a telepathic bond. He was obsessed with them, convinced their connection was beyond the physical. I should have never read that journal out loud, but I did, passing it around as we sat in the dirt, our voices echoing in the quiet woods. We took the box with us, figuring it was some cool, creepy relic. That night, we crashed at Jake's place, the box sitting on his coffee table like a trophy. That's when the dreams started. I woke up sweating, my heart racing, with this vivid image of two girls watching me from the corner of my room. Their faces were blurry, but I knew it was them, the twins from the photo. The next morning over breakfast, Sarah said she had the same dream. Then Mia. Then Jake. We laughed it off, blaming the creepy journal, but the air felt heavy, like we'd brought something back with us. Something came out with us that day. A few days later, Mia disappeared. She'd gone for a walk in the woods behind her house, same woods as the asylum, and never came back. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and her parents called 911. The cops searched but found nothing, not even footprints. That night I was lying in bed when I heard it. A whisper, faint but clear, like Mia's voice, saying my name. I bolted, upright, but my room was empty. I called Jake and Sarah, and they'd heard it too, always around midnight, always her voice. We stopped sleeping much after that. Every night the whispers got louder, sometimes mixed with crying, like Mia was, trying to tell us something. Then we found the footprints. They were outside Jake's house in the muddy backyard, two sets side by side, so close they almost overlapped. They led from the woods to his back door and just stopped. We checked the security camera his dad had set up, but it only showed static for a few seconds around 3 a.m., right when the footprints must have appeared. Sarah was freaking out, saying we'd disturbed something by taking the box. I didn't want to believe her, but I couldn't explain any of it. We went back to the journal, hoping for answers. The later entries got darker. Dr. Vance wrote about trying to separate the twins, convinced it would free their minds. The surgery was a disaster. One twin, Subject B, died on the table, screaming so loud it echoed through the asylum. The other, Subject A, survived but vanished a week later. The last entry just said, "She's not gone, she's waiting." We were scared out of our minds, but we decided to return the box to where we found it, hoping it'd stop whatever was happening. We hiked back to the spot, buried it, and said a half-assed prayer. For a couple of nights things were quiet. No dreams, no whispers. We thought it was over. Then Sarah called me, hysterical, saying she saw the twins standing in her backyard, holding hands, staring at her house. Jake stopped answering his phone. I went to his place and found it empty. The back door wide open, those side-by-side footprints leading into the woods. I didn't follow them. I couldn't. That night, I locked every door in my house and stayed, up with a baseball bat jumping at every creak. I must have dozed off because I woke up to a chill, like the room had dropped 20 degrees. My breath fogged in front of me, and I realized I wasn't alone. At the foot of my bed stood two shadows, their outlines barely visible in the moonlight. One was clear, a girl, her face pale, her eyes wide and pleading. The other was wrong. It had no face, just a smooth blank void where features should have been. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. The faceless one tilted its head like it was studying me, and the other reached out, her hand trembling. Then they were gone, like a light switching off. I moved out of town the next week, crashing with my cousin in Pittsburgh. I don't know what happened to Jake or Sarah. The cops never found Mia. I still dream about those twins sometimes, their shadows at the edge of my vision. I don't go into the woods anymore, don't look at old photos or journals. Whatever we dug up that day, it wasn't just a box. It was something alive, something angry, and I'm terrified it's still out there waiting for me to come back.